Hello, everyone. It's Martha Novak. This is a show called Real Life with Real Talk with Martha Novak. And it's real life, too. This is a live show today. I want to give a special hello to my cousins out there who are listening. And I had such a good time with them last night. And I said I was going to wear my pin. This is my cousin Randy, if you all can see him. Very handsome man. And I was going to wear it today. My problem is I can't get it through this. So I didn't realize that until the last minute. So anyway, you're with me in spirit right now. I hope you guys are doing well. And all of you are doing well. We're all relatives under the skin in this work, aren't we? We study consciousness here, consciousness and enlightenment and more loving ways of living in the world and doing things and what our choices really are. Because when we oftentimes grow up and we see our lives as a child sees them, and we do for a long time, because the developed mind doesn't even start until we're in our 20s. So when we're young, we have the undeveloped mind and we see everything relative to ourselves, and we fill in the blanks when our parents don't fill in the blanks for us. All children do. And sometimes our ideas, our ways of doing things are actually kind of screwy, simply because we didn't have the developed mind, you know. In other words, where I'm going with this, for example, is let's say you have a father who is a workaholic and he just works all the time. And you try your best to be the cute little thing. You excel in school. You excel on the ball field. You keep trying to get his attention. And because of his issue, you can't. So an adult that grows up does one of two things with that usually, or a mixture. And these are the things. They will strive all their life to get their father's attention even long after their father has passed, right? Still trying, all right? And there are substitute fathers, of course, along the way, your boss and various other things. Or the other choice is that they implode in themselves and they feel like they can't do anything because they never did get their father's attention. So all effort is futile. And that's transferred to life. All effort is futile. Why try, excelling in anything? I'm not going to get my father's attention. Now, you have to ask, is that all there is to life, getting their father's attention? And of course, the answer is, of course not, right? Okay, but in the child's mind, it is. Because before you're 8 years old, you're just trying to survive. You need your dad to try to survive. So what happens is that just simply gets generalized to other people, and the pattern continues. Now, is it supposed to be satisfied? The truth is, no. What we have to do, though, in consciousness work is we have to talk about it. We have to give the child's mind, which we all carry inside of us, by the way, a more global perspective. And then all of a sudden we start waking up and we realize there's a heck of a lot more to life. Good morning, Randy. I just got a notice that said good morning from my cousins. Good morning, everybody. This show is for you. I had so much fun with you guys last night. It was Randy's birthday party. I think Randy's birthday was a couple of months ago. But I say, there is just not enough celebration in the world anyway. So we're all, hi, Kat. We're all ready to jump in there and celebrate, especially our family. And this is great. Okay, so going back to the setup for this show, because I want you guys to understand where we're coming from. What consciousness studies entail is putting, hello, Lisa. That's not just all it entails. I'm not finishing my sentences very well this morning. What it entails is we do put everything in a more global perspective than the child saw it. One of the reasons our issues are formed is that we base our ideas of ourselves, our family, our world, the individuals in it, our God, and everything else on our perceptions, you see, as a child. Without our actually thinking through those, we hold those perceptions, and our life on the outside reflects what we believe, you see. So it's really important at some time in our development, and here we are listening to the show today, that we challenge these old ways of looking at the world. And that's what my show is about, whether we're talking about marriage or partnerships or making more money or being a good business person or creating the life you want or any of the multitude of things that we talk about on these shows. And by the way, this is a live show, so if anybody wants to call in, the number is 347-850-1647. That's the guest call-in number, 347-850-1647. Now, so what we do is we make assumptions based on appearances. We can even say, life is like this, because before our egos are formed, which, by the way, the ego in the ego child's mind happens about 18 months old. So we're quite young. The reason it comes along is because we perceive that enough bad things have happened to us, even if it was a late change of diaper, so that we start scanning the future to see if there's anything out there that's going to hurt us like these things did. That's the whole reason the ego in the ego child's mind, the part of you that thinks like a child, developed. We do it so that we won't be hurt. Here's the problem, though, with that. We're projecting in the future based on our fears of the past, so we're projecting into the past as well. And staying in this moment of now and making the most of it is not accomplished because our energy is divided over there. It's not here to do everything. For example, we had a great birthday party last night, we cousins, all right? And we could have easily not been there. We could have been thinking about what the dog was chewing up at home, or how I didn't do well with my boss, or how, I'm having trouble with my child. I know for me, and I think for a lot of my cousins, if not all, we were really having a good time. We were there. There was no place else on earth that we would rather be. Now that is being present, and that's what presence is. Being present with all of your energy, with every cell of your body. That it was a brilliant party was certainly part of it. Thank you, Chad. But I want you all to know that you are in charge of your moments. That means get everything out of your moments and don't divide your energy. Well, what divides your energy? Well, a lot of times issues do, worries do. Because one of the things that we don't understand about God is the nature of God. Now, let's talk about that for a minute, just to put all of us on the same page, and then we're going to launch in with our new material for the week. Because what we're talking about is how to be authentic, and that makes you happy. But authenticity is so multidimensional. And so what I'm doing and what I've put together is a list. We're already on item 41. By the way, all these shows are archived, so you can go back and listen to the previous ones if you're interested. But what we're doing is we're trying to decide what we can drop away right now we don't need anymore. Everybody's in their own ways as far as issues are concerned, and sometimes they are a deliberate or an indirect block to what you want. Forgive me, I have to drink tea from time to time because there's pollen And that gets me every time. Okay. Now let's talk about the nature of God like we talked about. I promised I was going to do. God is everything. The light and the dark, everything. In my belief system. Now, certainly, thank you for that, Heart. I'm certainly not going to ask you all to believe what I believe. I'm going to ask you to prove it to yourselves, whatever it is that you truly believe and want to believe. But here are some ideas, according to me. God is everything. So I think we can acknowledge that. And everything is energy. So God is energy as well. And I think truly the energy of God is love. All right. I think that's one of the reasons this whole world hasn't blown itself up a long time ago, because the energy is self-correcting if it is love. Now, that said, one of the things that confuses the individual human being about God is this, that God presents these two ways. It presents as the absence of itself, the child's mind, the God that's only there in the good times, but not in the bad. This is a lack idea of God. And I want us to bring it all to consciousness because everybody has it. All right? Until we don't, by the way. And this belief in this God that is fear-based and is the absence of itself is certainly the basis of the ego child's mind. And here's the most important part of what I'm saying. It is according to our understanding. Which mind are we in? Are we in this ego child's mind that sees everything as lack and deprivation and struggle? You see, anything that comes out of that fear and that struggle, that's this mind. But there's another mind that God is too, according to our understanding. Please know that it is our perception of God that creates this duality. You understand? And certainly God is the duality, but it's our understanding of this duality in terms of our investment of our energy in one thing or the other. So the higher mind, this mind, is called the higher self. It's called the higher mind. It's love-based, and it's the fullness of God in every way. The fullness. This is everything is so incredible in this world because of the fullness of God. There's plenty of abundance. For heaven's sakes, one of my favorite analogies is look at nature. I mean, I'm looking at it when I look over the computer right now, and oh my gosh, if I let this yard go, you wouldn't find me again because there's so much overgrowth, I mean, the woods are dense here. So God presents two ways according to our understanding, as the absence of itself, as the fullness of itself. We have the privilege of investing in one or the other. But the reason that you're listening to a show like this, and the reason we even talk about consciousness, is our sacred journey, our quest, our holy grail, if you will, is to go from the fear-based self to the love-based self. And what a fun journey that is. And we're all on it. Okay. I'd like to stop here for just a moment, and I'd like to do a little prayer. I want to get us all on the same page, and then I'm going to launch into our material. With that said, okay? All right, here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, thank you so much for our being here together under the banner of loving you. We so appreciate the opportunity to talk about things that the world doesn't usually even think about, much less talk about. We welcome you into our lives through us, for we can all be the channels for you and our highest self. We have experience to be in the channel for you and our lower vibrational self, in the lack. But we know that we can see things differently. And as that wonderful old Chinese proverb says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. This little adage gives us a lot of hope because we know that what is intrinsic to a better life is a change of mind. And we're here to open it as the first step to changing it. We thank you so much, and we are open now to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do in our enlightenment as you speak directly through us and through all things. We thank you, dear God, for it all. And we say this prayer in your name, in the name of the ascended masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and certainly in the name of everybody listening to this show today. Thank you. And so it is. All right. And what Martha's going to do right now, by the way, anticipating this, is put on the air conditioning. It's kind of hot. All right. Here we go. I had such an interesting class yesterday. I have a very advanced class who've been with me for quite a long time studying. One of the women shared a story that I thought I would share with you today because I think it rather puts in perspective our choices here. The story went like this. She has a friend that she's had for something like 38 years. They've certainly had their differences, but they care about each other. They love each other. And this experience that brought everything to a head has happened before. So my friend feels very strongly about certain things in politics. And so she sent a treatise, something that someone had written, I think, about her side or about politics in general or something, to her friend whom she knows feels quite differently about it. Well, she got an email back that was scathing. It was very, very hurtful. And my friend felt enormously hurt. Now, certainly we can ask, well, why send it out when you know this is the way she's going to respond? And she will say to you, she sometimes doesn't respond this strongly, and she'd like to have a dialogue with her. How fun just to be able to sit around and say, I believe this, you believe this. Is there any solution here? By the way, probably not. Hi, Pat. Oh, aren't you sweet? I love hearing from you. I laughed this morning and I said, Pat Bunch is going to tell me I need to go and iron myself when this is fashion, Pat. Or so they say. Anyway, thank you. Pat, a lot of times, guys, comments on Facebook Live on what I'm wearing or the piece of jewelry I have on or something. And I've known Pat for years and love him a lot. Okay, so, I think that it's a wonderful thing when we have good friends that we can just talk about all sorts of subjects, right, without getting mad. However, my friend wrote her friend back, and it was a very loving letter, and it was certainly, saying I'm sorry that I offended you. I was just trying to open some conversation. Her friend wrote her back and said she was going through a very bad time and she had just been switched to a new antidepressant and it was not agreeing very well and she was worried about this and this and this in her life. My friend said to me and to the class, if I'd just known that, I would have addressed this whole thing differently. But what kind of good friend doesn't tell you some of these things so that you know how to approach? Okay, that's the way she believes. That's just fine with me. But something struck me about this story, which I thought was just enormously interesting. And that is, my friend has been in my classes, in my advanced classes for a long time. And I brought this up yesterday that about 3 quarters ago or so, I gave them an exercise. And the exercise was, I want you to think of the worst thing that you can deal with in your life, what you're most afraid of. What is it? Some people wrote down the death of their spouse. Some people wrote down losing all their money. Some people wrote down, the scary things in life that human beings often are afraid of, right? And then I said, now I'm going to give you a half an hour to tell me exactly what you would do if that happened. And I want you to write it 1, 2, 3, make a list of exactly what you would do. It was interesting because at the end of the exercise, and I'm really going somewhere with the initial story in this one, don't give up on me yet. What happened was that every one of them, after this was over, said, how to handle this. So it isn't scary anymore. I don't want it to happen, but I would know what to do. Here's my list. Now, the point that I'm putting on the table here for you is a lot of our behaviors that are not emotionally mature come out of our assuming with our child's mind that we don't know what to do. And I pointed this out, and I don't mean to be in any way narcissistic about that. That didn't play into this, so please don't interpret that way. But I said, you know how to have a conversation with a friend who doesn't agree with you. She does not know how to handle a conversation with someone who does not agree with you. The interesting thing is, what we're talking about right now is the art of conversation, the art of communication. There is an art to it, and there's just plain old communication, right? The art is knowing who you're talking to and how much or how little of that the person standing in front of you can take of you. You see? And whether they feel enormously threatened. Now, you can say to yourself, till the cows come home, I'm not a threat. I just want to have a wonderful discussion. We talked about this last night, didn't we, cousins? But the bottom line here is nobody has to get mad at anybody else, particularly about politics, because I got to tell you that politics change all the time. We're going to have other elections. So there's no reason to argue about this. I absolutely hold your coat and say, go, 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 for you to have any belief that you want about that. My job is to say, don't vote out of your issues. That's the only thing that I have to do with this. And I think I've done shows on that, as a matter of fact. But other than that, just having a clear head, you are entitled to whatever you believe. But how wonderful to realize that we can have conversations with people and not feel threatened. We can just have conversations. I believe this, really? Well, I believe this. So what? Now, let's talk about going back to the two minds. Because when you're in the egoic child's mind, there are certain issues that are always present there, like I need to be right, and I might not, I've got to hold my own in this conversation. And a lot of people, when they are insecure, try to dominate the conversation, and really drive their point home. Some of them get very narcissistic and say, oh, the other person is stupid, in their minds, even if they don't say it out loud. All of this has got to go. These are all child's mind issues, because how nice when you are in the higher mind and you want to hear what everybody says. Isn't that nice? We should be able to bat ideas around. One of the things I like so much, I've been doing a lot of reading lately, and I really did like the writer Pat Conroy. He died in 2016, but he wrote with such heart. Such a nice man. And I've just read a book of his final blogs and letters in the last few years of his life. Oh, my Lord. Kids, I was driving down the highway bawling like a who knows what, because it was just so touching. One of the things I like so much about him, and I hear from these people that have written about him, is that he just would sit down with everybody and say, tell me a story. He'd just say, tell me about your life. He'd stop. People said that his handlers, when he'd go to a book signing, were pulling their hair out because he just stopped everybody that came along, and they all wanted to tell him stories and he all wanted to hear them. I just think that's just dear. This is a man who wasn't threatened by what other people thought. He knew what he thought, but he just liked to hear who they were and what their stories were. And he said to every one of them, that's probably going to be in one of my books, which I think that is just real sweet and dear too. Now, what I want to put on the table for you is that everybody has an agenda. Every single person walking this earth has an agenda. The thing about agendas is you really need to know that. You need to be discerning. Oh, hello, Mike. Thank you so much. That's so sweet. Thank you. Everybody walking the earth has an agenda. Your best friends are the ones that, oh, hello, Jerry. Nice to see you too. Your best friends are the ones that have similar agendas. For example, here we are together, and thank you so much for listening. You're wondering what the heck I'm doing here and what I'm going to talk about today, and you want to hear some part of it for whatever reason, and I want to share that with you. We have a mutual agenda. Isn't it nice? But somebody who's a con artist who wants to steal your money does not have the same agenda you do. So one of the things that I see happening in life with sensitive people and with people that are really trying to be their best self is sometimes they're taken advantage of. And you know why? Because they have not brought up in them one of the God-given gifts in deepening consciousness and waking up in our highest self's mind, and that is discernment. We need to be discerning. Now, what does that mean? That means let's look at people's agenda. Let's see, if we're all going in the same direction. That doesn't mean don't love and be afraid of people that aren't. But do know who you're talking. There's no use in talking to someone whose mind is closed. You can just appreciate them as who they are. I'm going to tell you, Pat Conroy talked to a lot of closed minds. Look at what's in his books. It didn't scare him. He just turned around and taught in his way, like I turn around and teach in mine. Okay? All right. Now, all of that was a preamble. Oh, I just thought of something else. It's a preamble that I don't want to go past, and then we'll go into the list. All right. One of the reasons it takes weeks to get through a darn list is because I'm always doing this, and saying, oh, wait a minute, there's something else. I want you all to know, I was also talking to my class 2 weeks ago about this. I don't think mothers sometimes, and some of them do, aware mamas do this, but even aware mamas just cannot, and fathers, by the way, just cannot see everything there is to see that a child is putting together in their head. But one of the things that I do try to teach my young mothers that come to me for private sessions is there's an essential part of motherhood and fatherhood that is often forgotten. The only reason I keep saying motherhood is I'm thinking of two specific clients that are women, but this happens certainly. This is not a sexist statement because really fathers and mothers need to be aware of this, and that is that when something happens to your child, whatever it is, it's extremely important to frame that experience in a higher way, in the way that is most beneficial and loving for that child and for this world. It's not enough to say, if a child is mean to your child, oh, they're just jealous. They're just jealous. You've got to help them know what to say and what to do and how to negotiate the next day in that environment, whether or not that is true. You know, you need to talk to them about hurtful things, and when someone hurts your feelings, the inappropriate thing to do is lash out at them. The appropriate thing to do is to tell them that you see them and you want to really like them, but that got in the way, and they're good people at heart, and that might have not been a real statement that might have been in keeping with their character. All of this is off the top of my head, of course, but there's so much to do to frame that picture. And we were talking about how none of our parents did frame that. Good morning, Wes. Yay! He's another cousin, guys. They're gradually shifting in. Now, y'all get your coffee and come on. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. You have no idea. That was just the sweetest gift you gave me last night, saying everybody was going to tune in. And there was quite a bunch of us, all of you that are cousins to be. We had quite the party. It was wonderful, just wonderful. So, one of the things I'm wanting you to know is in your own life, as well in the lives of every child walking the planet, without a lot of information and the parents helping to frame a situation or a person or an abuse or on anything, we fill in the blanks. And this is one of the ways sometimes our issues are formed. For example, the one I told you about just now, about the mean girls that kind of beat up on one of my friends who is now working on herself. What she did with that was to generalize. See, when you have, when you're a little kid and you're in the ego child's mind, you do three things for your issues. You normalize them. I just expect that little girl's going to be mean to me. That's normal. That's a normalization, okay? You generalize. All people have the potential to be as mean as these little girls to me. And another thing that people often do is if issues are just really untenable. For example, this woman didn't have any friends when I knew her 20 years ago because she was kind of afraid to have friends. She didn't trust friends. She trusted her family unit, but she didn't trust people, right? Because she had normalized, generalized, and she'd also elevated her issue of solitude and aloneness to a level that it was very spiritual to be that way and not have a lot of friends. And she got to meditate a lot and introspect. Guys, we're here for a reason, and we're connected for a reason. We're all connected, and we're not supposed to isolate and withdraw. And guys, I know this sounds ridiculous, and you're going to say, oh, no, are you kidding me? I'm an introvert. I am. I'm a big introvert, because all introvert and extrovertism is somebody, the introvertism is somebody that gets energy from being alone. That's how I renew, how introverts renew, and extroverts are people that get energy from being with other people. But that doesn't mean that you get to be one or another in the world. We're supposed to be participants of everything in this life. And that means you don't stay in your room and cut your friendships off. You do not do that. You see, but she had elevated it. It was now biblical proportions that she did. She gave herself an excuse. You see. Okay, so we do these three things to then move in and kind of hold on to these issues that we perceive protects us when we're vulnerable. And by the way, most of our issues are formed before we're 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. And we're kind of cooked like a fine Christmas goose until we're not. Until we listen to a show like this, until we go, you know what, I'm doing that. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm happy to say with this particular woman, she has more friends now, and I'm one of them, and I'm very privileged to be. Okay. We can't use excuses for ourselves, but her mother only told her that the girls were jealous and sent her right back to school the next day. That didn't help anything. How do you handle a jealous child? And how do you open your mind so you don't hate them? Because she grew up hating them. What's a more loving thing to do? There are a lot of things we could do. We can sit down and dialogue with the family, the other family. We can give that child some armament to go back in and say, I really like you. I think you're a really nice person, but that hurt my feelings. And here's something that I have been known to coach before, and that is when you're standing in a group of people to say, dear, if you, or no, that's a grown-up word, let's say, Susan, if your intention was to hurt my feelings, you have. And that makes me very sad because I really do want to like you. Now, what happens with something like that? She looks good. Susan doesn't look so good. Everybody's heard it. It's one of the ways we can have people sit down. The fact is, all of you that are parents will never know all the things going on in your kids' mind. Nevertheless, I want to say to everybody, there's a lot more. They're filling in the blanks for themselves. And they will be much more adept at being strong, wonderful individuals that can handle themselves in the world if you show them higher and higher ways to do that. Of course, what that means is you have to get there first, right? Yeah, it does. Okay. I think I'm finished with the opening. So let's go now to some of these things. We're going to start with 41. And this is authenticity and happiness, according to me. I think it's really important to learn to be honest. Now, that seems like such a crazy statement, doesn't it? Here I am coaching all of you all that are wonderful people and are good people, and you would never go, like I did the other day, and take $10 out of your husband's wallet so you could buy something. I did tell him. So that was honest. And he's always sweet and generous. But what I'm saying is, all joking aside, you wouldn't go and you wouldn't take any money out of somebody's wallet or purse. And yet, part of being emotionally mature is being emotionally honest. And you know what? We're just not. There's several reasons for that. For one thing, sometimes whatever we're saying doesn't have to do, whatever we're feeling doesn't have to do with what we're saying. How many times have we had a rough day at work and come home and grouched at our partners or our friend, and they haven't done anything, you see? That's not necessarily being emotionally honest. To be emotionally honest, one needs to really know about emotion. And many people have grown up in real suppressed homes. I did. I mean, I had a great mom and dad, but we just weren't very emotional. We just kind of chilled, you know. It's all very cerebral in our house. Nothing wrong with that. But I had to learn as an adult to be emotionally available and to be able to talk emotion. Now, I'm going to put on the table for you all a wonderful exercise. And I gave this to somebody Friday in his sessions, and he was so excited about it. And I always recommend this. This is just great. First of all, one of the things I want you to recognize is that emotion is just a signpost. If you're feeling bad, saying there's something bothering you, find out what it is. That's really all it's about. It's not there to make your life miserable. It's not there to overwhelm you. One of the reasons that you are overwhelmed is because you are not calling that emotion by name when it happens. So here's the exercise. If you get on the internet and just enter a list of emotions and find any list on there, I don't recommend any particular one, but find as many words as you can. Here's the thing I want you to remember about this exercise. There are only really two emotions. One is fear, again, the fear-based self, the ego, child's mind self. And one is love, and that's the higher self, the energies that are pure and unadulterated by too many issues, okay? So you've got these two things. All the words that are coming now on these lists are in that category, or one category or another, or by the way, in both. Now, here's the confusing thing about that. Let's take a category like sacrifice. Let's say that's one of your words, sacrificial, okay? If you are in the ego child's mind, sacrificial is going to cause you to give away everything you've got. You're going to shut the door to people because you know that they will take from you. You will not know how to stop it because you're in the child's mind. Now, let's take that same word, sacrificial, and let's put it in the higher self, because you can have the same word in both things, but they look very different. Sacrifice to the higher mind is when you love someone absolutely, that you don't mind giving this thing up so that they can be really, really happy. Okay, but there is no resentment there. There's no what am I trying to say? There's no adulteration about it. It's very clean. I want to give. Right? I want to give. I had a big lesson on this years and years ago when I was very much in my ego child's mind and didn't understand any of this. I was with a friend. We were downtown. I was riding with her, and we stopped at a stoplight, and a man came hurrying up to the car, and he was very dirty and disheveled and obviously homeless, and he asked for money. And my darling friend reached in her bag and gave him $10. And this just blew my mind, right? And I said, when we started up again, I said, sweetie, he's probably just going to go to the liquor store and buy booze with that. And she said, he asked for money, and my job was just to give it. My job is not to judge what he does with that money. I thought that was just such an incredible thing. It leads me right to what I'm saying right now. It isn't a question of giving or not giving. It's a question of, if you're going to give with no strings attached, no judgment. Just give. Maybe somewhere in that, he'll find some food, and he'll have the means to find it. Maybe. You see? That was a big lesson for me. I got it loudly and clearly. Going back to this, we have to learn to be honest. We have to learn what the words are first. So on that list that I'm asking you to pull out, when most of us can recognize we're angry when we're real pissed off, right? But that anger is made of various things that are going to be on that list. It's marvelous for you to say, well, what comprises this anger? There'll be disappointment, there'll be fear, there'll be anxiety, there'll be heartbreak that you didn't get your way, there'll be the idea that I might never get my way. There are going to be pieces of that umbrella issue that are on that page that are very important to call by name. I've had 2 marriages. The first marriage, I was young, and I didn't have the ability to call anything by name. I want you all to know that when you don't, there's no place for, say, an argument to go, but to sweep those issues under the rug. In 20 years, then, you have a nice big pile under the rug, and nothing has a name, so nothing can be fixed. Now, that doesn't mean you have to get divorced. That means that you're either going to have to say, from this moment on, I'm not going to add to that pile, and I'm going to forgive all of that. For me not knowing and for him not knowing, I forgive it all and walk away. Very hard to do because secret resentments are in that pile, and not so secret as well, right? But the healthy thing to do is to have that sheet in front of you and go, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this. What do you feel? I feel this, I feel this, I feel this. How are we going to resolve that so this doesn't happen again? What can we do for this instance not to be a problem anymore? And then you get to the solution, right? And everybody's heard exactly what's been going on. And the most important thing is that you acknowledge it for yourself. You see? This is how you become emotionally fluid, and emotionally fluid precedes emotional intelligence. And it's a very important thing to have. And then you catch these little moments as they occur, don't sweep them under the rug, and you deal with them, and you find better solutions, and you don't have anything under the rug, ever. It's a very nice way to live. But we're all going to have to learn to work with emotion. Well, you see? When one doesn't know how to work with emotion, and by the way, I'm going back to something that I said in the very beginning of this talk when I was telling you this story about the woman that got so mad about my friend, my client, sending the political article to her. And that is, you don't know what to do. So you just try various things. You can thwart the situation and consider it a thwart and jump on it and try to control it so you won't be hurt, even though there's no thwart. See, it doesn't have to be a thwart. There can be the perception of that in the child's mind. You understand? So you can do it that way. You can get very narcissistic and believe you're right and there is another idea in the world. Okay, a lot of people do that. You can fantasize. One of these women that had a similar situation said, I go into fantasy. I just say, everything is just fine. I'm happy, when she's not at all. And she has a severe depression she doesn't talk about with anybody because she's so happy, happy, happy. And she's not, you see. Isn't that interesting? We can isolate, we can withdraw, we can get very negative in our thinking because if we disappoint ourselves first, then we won't be so disappointed with others. And part of this is I'm sitting on a pillow, by the way, so I can get up a little higher. That's what you see me doing, is jockeying on this pillow. Another thing we do is we just try to control our world in whatever aspect, rather than become emotionally mature. One of the ways we can control our world is comparing ourselves to others. We are better than, or we are less than. I want to warn you about that, and that's what, by the way, all children do. but it's supposed to drop away when we get to be an adult. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, somebody develops into a raging narcissist, right? But it's damaging because this better than, lesser than game, first of all, is two parts. If you're going to be better than, there are going to be times you're going to feel lesser than, because the lesser than propels you to be better than. You need them. But you can't get too better than, because you know it's not true. So that propels you into lesser than, that then propels you into better than. Yeah, it's a loop. It's a loop that has to be interrupted, you see. Very important to see what you're doing and go, that's not the truth, is it? Here's the truth. You want to know what would be a really good thing to do instead of that? Find out who you are. Find out what you believe, who you are. Make the most of it. Take a class. Be yourself. Tell the truth in a loving way. Keep silent. A lot of times, our big lesson is, no need to say that. There are all sorts of things, but it's all about who are you. You're going to hear more about that in just a minute, okay? But that all falls to me into the category of we've got to learn to be emotionally honest. We have to learn to speak emotion without shying away from it, and we have to be honest about it. I'll tell you another wonderful story that a man told me that I thought was just great. A couple came to me and they were having a bit of trouble in their marriage. I do a lot of couple counseling. And they came to me and we were working through everything. And I saw them separately as well as together. And the man came in for his private session and he said, I had such a revelation after I saw you the last time. And he said, I realized I want her to be crazy. I need her to be a villain because it helps me work out my anxiety. And his mother was pretty crazy, you see. Now, his wife was not. She was certainly on personal growth and really trying to open up and change, and she was struggling here or there, as we all do. But that was a huge revelation that he needed her to be crazy and to not change, so he never saw the changes, because he needed somebody to be angry at to relieve the stress in him. That's the way he did it when he was a boy. And that's the way he was still doing it until he woke up and went, what am I doing? I say I want a happy marriage. I say I love her. And yet I'm doing this because that was the pattern with my mom. I was real proud of him. And that day he changed. Next. We want to stop trying to fit in. You know, when we're all kids, we certainly do try to fit in. And we people please a lot. Or we are oppositional defiant and we don't people please at all, right? So what do we do instead? First of all, there are just some universal truths to put on the table, which is everybody's not going to like everybody. It's just the way it is. So why isn't that all right? The fact is, it is. All right? Often when we people please, we are not pleasing the one person that matters because we are not, here we go again, emotionally honest and saying that's what we're doing. The one person that really matters is us. We're crossing our boundary. When we're people pleasing, when we're saying things that aren't true, we're hurting ourselves. The sense of self is such an important thing for all of us to have. Some of us as children, believe it or not, were trained out of that. I can tell you lots of stories about this. Of a client who is one of the most wonderful women, and she's worked so hard, and she's over this certainly now. but she had a mother who was always ill, in and out of mental institutions. Um, Somebody who only liked her when her child became her, capitulated, and gave her everything at the sacrifice of the little girl's sense of self, and gave her the cold, silent, cutting her out of her life treatment when she tried to exert any individualism at all. And so as an adult, she's had a very hard time doing that. She's been a very dependent personality until she learned not to be anymore, and that it was just fine to unearth who she really was. So a lot of times we didn't have that sense of self develop. I had the most interesting exercise yesterday we did in class. The results were really quite amazing. So here was the exercise. I asked everybody to describe a specific moment that gave them pleasure. Now, there are two things here. There's pleasure that's momentary but wonderful, like a sunset. And I say momentary because you can enjoy that sunset all to heck, but then you don't think about it the next day. You know, it goes in our little box of beautiful sunsets. There you are, right? Gratification is something different. Gratification is using your talents and gifts and abilities in some way and feeling more gratified. This was not an exercise about gratification. And by the way, the reason I'm telling you this as part of happiness is to have a little more gratification in your life than pleasure, all right? Although you need both. But the gratification is kind of a soul thing. It satisfies your soul, right? This was pleasure. So the exercise is choose a specific, very pleasurable moment, and I want you to describe it using all your senses. Touch, smell, taste, visual, and hearing, right? Describe that moment. Oh, it was enormously interesting. The whole class took a few minutes and they wrote about, this moment. Two people who are a married couple wrote about the experience. By the way, they didn't know they were each writing about this, but when their little Chihuahua dog nestles in their lap at nighttime. It was just fascinating. It was so precious. And they wrote about two different things. The way they described that sensation was so unique to them. It was beautiful to see. The whole class did this, except for one person. This was so interesting. And this is no fuss and no judgment. The reason I'm putting it on the table is it might show you something about you. But I wanted to mention this because this dear person, who is struggling, by the way, with going deeper, said that her favorite moment was being out in the forest and just observing nature. Now, first of all, she chose a non-specific story. I am in the forest. I was there on Tuesday. From this time to this time, that's the moment I want. This was just her forest experience. There was a chorus of birds. I remember her saying that. A chorus of birds. Have you listened to birds recently? There is no chorus. There are these marvelous individual voices that are sometimes loud and sometimes soft and sometimes a little bit of everything. I'm trying to learn some of the bird sounds now because we have a feeder outside, and they often come and they talk to me. It's really, really fun. And I could never mimic anything like that. Have you heard bird callers before? They're fascinating. They sound just like the birds. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm certainly talking about it is a lot more detailed than a chorus of birds. She went on to talk about everything in the forest, the shade in the forest. I didn't never know the trees that were there, or what the floor was like, or whether she had a tick on her leg from trooping through the forest. I didn't know anything about her experience at all. We all chuckled together, and she did too, because she's so obviously hiding. She'll say, I don't want to bring my sense of self up. And yet, she's in class. She's one of our most faithful ones. She does want it, but she's still hiding. So it was really interesting. This exercise brought very clearly, simple little exercise, describe something specifically pleasurable. Showed me, showed the class that she's not working from her sense of self at all. She's working from what she ought to say. Her shoulds. I should say this, I should say that. She said to describe a smell. Here's a smell for you. Instead of what your pleasure is. And the interesting thing is I had a whole exercise. That was just the beginning of the exercise. I wanted them to have a real pleasant experience so that they could see what happened to their body when things were difficult, when they used perfectionism or something to get in the way, which is, by the way, an issue, you see. So I just wanted to have that pure, clear experience, and I want them to really feel it so then they could see it drop away and they could see more clearly what they were doing to get in the way of that pleasurable experience. Because everything should be pleasurable, don't you think? I mean, my philosophy is if you are not having fun in that moment or learning something, if it's not a good moment, heck, go do something else. Be there. Be there, committed to it if you're going to be there. Right? Okay. Sense of self. I had recommended another exercise that's really quite simple for the sense of self, which is, spend half a day doing everything from your sense of self. Here's a pen. I can be totally unconscious and pick up this pen. Or I can say, I am picking up this pen. I am picking up this pen. I am putting the pen down. I am picking up my Randy button. I am putting the Randy button back down on the desk. I am doing this. There's another, I taught acting for years. I would often see actors get up and they would do a scene with somebody and they were just not even there. They were not connecting to the other person on the stage. Maybe this was a love scene and they were doing nothing but thinking about themselves. You just see this kind of blank expression. And it's like, can you even see the other person? Can you even hear what they're saying? And, they were just kind of doing it by rote. And so one of the real good ways to fix that, and this would be fine for you, I often use it for business speeches, is I have a ball that has all these nubs on it, I actually confiscate it from my dog from time to time because he sneaks into my box and gets it. But it's a little nubby ball. And if I played ball with this actor, who's not in their body, but who's watching themselves from outside, if I play ball and that ball is bouncing all which way, and I say, do your lines, do the scene with me while you're catching this ball, that fixes it. He can't catch the ball and not be in his body. You see? So that's a good one too. Sometimes we need to train ourselves to be back here and just work from the sense of self. Because if we had very critical parents, for example, we're really used to seeing ourselves from their perspective. I'm always wrong comes out of that, by the way. An overly critical parent. Oh, you don't want to get in trouble, so let's be the overly critical parent too, and let's watch ourselves every minute. That's no way to live, is it? It just isn't. Good. I know you get it. All right, moving along. The next one that I want to talk about is I think it's really important to admit, to face, here we're back to honesty again, self-doubt. I think we ought to talk about it. You know, one of the things that, reasons I do a show like this is all the therapies that are really good out there are all saying, for God's sake, talk about this. And we've got such a healthy advanced class that I give on Saturdays because, oh, this is so fun. Because when we first started out, 20 years ago, I've been teaching this class for 21 years. When we started out, everybody was so ashamed of what they did. Oh, I have an issue. And we encouraged people to talk about it and to be really safe. And these days, everybody is just saying, oh, I do that. Oh, my God, I do that too. Oh, here's what's going on a deeper level with that. And these classes, oh, my God, are so deep psychologically. And people are saying and having the most incredible revelations in their lives. It's very exciting. One of the reasons is they are so safe talking about these very deep things. It gives them permission, without judgment of themselves or thinking they're going to get it from other people, to look more deeply, right? And that's where all solutions are. Very exciting. Now, let's talk about self-doubt a minute, because self-doubt is a natural part of life. We shouldn't have it chronically, by the way. We should go in and out of it. If it's a chronic thing, it happened in your childhood, we got to deal with that issue first. But what self-doubt generally means when you've done some work on yourself is you're going through a transition, you're learning something new, and there's more to learn. Number 2. But the interesting thing about human beings is that they don't tolerate uncertainty very well. And I'm going to tell you that we need to. We need to feel safe within ourselves and safe with God that is all we are. Now, let's talk about that aspect of God for a minute. God is all you are, all you've ever been. You've got all the talents and gifts and abilities and abundance and everything. So right there inside of you, whatever you're feeling you're lacking isn't lacking. So what is happening? You've got some beliefs and some issues in the way of it being fulfilled and manifesting in your life. That's what's going on. You were born with everything everybody else has in terms of the ability to create the life you want. But we have to remove some of the old ideas. There's a darling woman up here. She's from the country. I like her very, very much as a person. I got a text from her or something. It was, if I'm recalling, I didn't expect to tell this story, but she, I think she was due here to help me plant some flowers, and she said I can't be there because, I can't get a ride, and she lives in a different state, so, it's not like I can go pick her up, which ordinarily I would have no problem with. So I wrote her back, and I said, child, you need a truck, because she's been saying she wants a truck. And she wrote me back and saying, well, only if God is willing, and God, I don't know whether God will grant that for me, or something to that effect. And I had a talk with her the other day, and I said, who do you think God is? God is, and this is where I'm going with us, God is everything you are. It's what you are, except for us being in the way with the ego child's mind. You're nothing but love. And sometimes we have to distort that love because we learned early on in our childhoods that it couldn't be pure love. And there's some parents that actually would rather change that love to fear. I think of Pat Conroy's father in The Great Santini. He'd rather have a son that feared him than loved him. He couldn't handle love. You see? But it's still love, even if it mutes to fear. It's like, love is like an ice cube. Let's talk about that. Nothing can turn into something that is not at first itself. Oh boy, that's a confusing remark. In other words, here's an ice cube, and it was water to begin with. Therefore, with a little heat, it can be water again. Love is exactly the same way. All these issues that we've distorted, and we've gotten angry, and we've gotten this, and we've gotten that, and we've gotten this, all these things that we have done and we recognize that are probably our lesser selves, they're all just love that couldn't be what it is. Michael and I certainly talk, my husband and I certainly talk about when we have any kind of little misunderstanding and argument, we want to find the answer, which is usually there as soon as we, get less hot and feel heard. We need to feel heard, go in our separate ways, get less hot. And then we've got an answer about what we both thought the other was saying. And partnership is a wonderful way to turn all those little parts of us that are not quite love back into what it really is. I say we're not really finished with an argument until we love the person even more. And that's how we grow together through the years, you see. We understand what they were motivated by. They understand what we are motivated by. I tell a funny story, and I've said this before, but I'm going to share it with you again. Sometimes I think what I'm talking about is so heavy, I need to break it up with stories. So here's another one. So this was when Michael and I believe we first got married, and we decided we were going to take a little trip, because he's from Vienna, Austria. We were going to go on down to Italy and drive around Italy. Well, I'm driving around Italy, and I'm doing what I do in any place I'll go. I have been doing this since I was 14 years old. Going, oh my God, look at that house. Look at the backyard of that house. I wonder what that looks like on the inside. I wonder how that's laid out. Oh, that's really interesting. Oh, look at that balcony. Oh, this would look better if they did this. I'd plant a bush right there. That's what I do. And unfortunately, I do it out loud. I'm still doing it. Okay. I just love houses. I do. I think it's so much fun to see all of this. Well, by the time we got to dinner that night, he was so snipey to me, I couldn't believe it. What the hell was going on? I didn't think I had done anything to warrant these snipey little remarks that were hurting me. So we went to bed mad that night. And by the way, I highly recommend going to bed mad, because you've got to have some time to sort through all this in your subconscious mind so you can clear it up. So all this thing about don't go to bed mad, oh please, it's so much romanticized claptrap as far as I'm concerned. So we went to bed mad. Next morning, we woke up, and now this is where I need to stop and say, I wear false eyelashes. I mean, I came from the theater, right? That's where my background was. So you bet I put on false eyelashes when I want to, make a public appearance. So I always put my false eyelashes in a little cup or a little glass with some baby oil in it so I can wash them and use them the next day, right? Okay. So it was very cold in Italy, and I woke up, I was still pissed, and I got up, and I was the first one up, and in this mound of covers, I don't even see him, in this mound of covers on the bed, I hear this tiny little voice that says, "You can't put on your eyelashes today." And I still didn't get it, so I whirled around and I said, "And why not?" Little tiny voice from all these covers says, "Because I drank them. Because I drank them." I was shocked. And then I hear another little voice saying, "And it was horrible." He had gotten up in the night, and he thought it was water, a little sip of water, and he drank them, and the eyelashes and the baby oil went down. Oh my God. We laughed so hard, all the anger just went right out the window. And I got in bed with him and I said, "Babe, what was that about? Why were you so nasty to me?" And he said, "I thought you were trying to get me excited about buying a house over here when I know you'll never live in Europe. You have your work and everything in the United States, and I thought you were jerking me around." And it was like, I've been doing this since I was 14, talking about houses, and that is not my nature to jerk you around. It was such an important moment for him to see who I was really was, and to see a real sore point with him. He was going to miss Europe when he came over here, you see? So it's, you gotta figure this out, guys. And I go back to, we don't know how all this is going to turn out. Life is a divine improvisation. But when you are in partnership or in friendship with something that really matters to you, you can ignore it and sweep it under the rug. You can and be miserable the rest of your life. You can talk about it without any resolution. You can resolve it or you can divorce. I don't think there's any choice for us but to talk about it and resolve it. And that's very loving. And just like the ice cube, it'll turn into water. But you got to find out those unloving spots inside of you, right? We all have them. And partnership is a great way to find them. It just is. It shows you all those little unloving moments, you see. Now, self-doubt, I think it's marvelous to always ask ourselves, what's motivating us? I talk to a lot of people that dither, and they'll say, I don't know whether I should go on this trip or should I not go on this trip. Should I not? What should I do? The person I was going with has cut out. I don't know whether to go alone or, and they just go back and forth. And on that level, there are no solutions. As a matter of fact, we dither because we've made up our minds. Here's another way we're not being entirely honest with ourselves. We've made up our minds, but we're not comfortable with the mind that made up the solution. We're not comfortable with it. So we have to commit to what we've decided or change our minds again and do what we really want, not what we should do. That's another way we self-doubt. We have all sorts of ways we do this. Self-doubt is part of life, but it should not be chronic. If you find that it is chronic, you have to work out the issues. There are only two issues in the world, right? You've heard me say this before. Those two issues are at the base of self-doubt. First issue is, you don't care about me. You don't care about me. Second issue is, I'll never get what I want. Both of those issues are in some way connected to self-doubt. And it becomes extremely important for us to get those out of us, to talk about these things and to work them out. Because I believe that you do get what you want. I believe that formula comes out of your highest self. When you are in your loving highest self, you create a situation whereby you create a win-win so that you and I agree to agree or disagree. Highest self stuff, right? If we're in the ego child's mind, however, it's all about me at the expense of you, or it's all about you at the expense of me, which is still all about me because I've just made myself a victim. If we're in this mode, the self-doubt mode, it's a closed system. The ego child's mind, closed system. I don't want to hear what you have to say. You might threaten what I believe not because I believe something wrong necessarily, but because I'm insecure about who I am. See, Nothing's what it seems here. Isn't that interesting? So we have to get a little uncluttered in our minds and hearts and very being so we can see what we really feel. And we can talk from that truth. And we can talk through our self-doubt to get to clarity. I've said for years to my advanced class that all confusion is a smoke screen that the ego throws up so you won't see past it. And you say, I'm so confused. It's part of our drama. Drama's got to go. That's an issue. There's no such thing as confusion. There are times that we don't know, so say you don't know. Here's what the problem is there. When we, and this has to do with self-doubt too, when we say we don't know something, it's what we do with that can be a problem. Because if we use that to self-attack instead of just a simple, I have no idea about this subject, I don't know. Or I don't know what the next minute will bring. I don't know. It's just what it is. It's a fact. You don't know. But what do we do with it? We take it into secondary emotions, and it becomes a self-attack. I've never known. I'm stupid. I don't know. I never know. You've lost me. I'm always lost in a conversation. Everybody else knows but me. I never have known about anything. I'm dumb. It's self-attack. Sometimes in self-doubt, it's self-attack. Now, here's the thing. You have learned, as all people have learned, that their issues are keeping themselves safe. It's propaganda from the ego child's mind. You're safe because you're limited. You stay limited. See, the ego child's mind doesn't care if you're happy. It just wants you alive. That was its job. Now, at whatever age you are, I hope you want yourself happy. If you do, all of this has got to be cleaned up. Because happy is just being real. It's staying in whatever the primary emotion is. And if you want to hear other shows about primary and secondary emotions, by all means, listen. I think I talked even about them last week. Guys, we didn't get very far on our list, did we? I'll leave you with one other thing because we've got 7 minutes left. Change is good. If change rattles your bones and you think it isn't, it's because there's some issues that told you that change was scary and bad in your childhood. Things surprised us then. We didn't have the developed mind. We couldn't know why our fathers flew into rages or our mothers shrunk and stayed all day in bed and weren't mothers to us. We don't have those things. Everything's relative to us. It was our fault that those things happened. It was something we did. Because the child can't see past itself. That's why when you're in the child's mind, that's all you can see still, right? That's why we're having a radio show like this, get you in the other mind. So when things came along, it surprised us, and we did not have the tools to cope because those hadn't been developed yet. We developed those a little bit later on. We can develop them too in our childhood, but they're coping mechanisms like fantasy. Well, it's so horrible to stay here and hear our parents yell at each other so much. I'm going to go to my room and I'm going to create fantasies. And then you grow up to be the person that can't function in the world because fantasy is its own reward. You want to be an actor, but you don't take an acting class. Oh no, you stay in your room and you fantasize about it. And then what happens is you, that becomes your life. Fantasy is its own reward. It makes you feel good. You don't want to compete in the real world. That might not make you feel good. That's going to challenge you to be real and drop the fantasy. See? So we have all sorts of coping mechanisms. And many of them come out of the old misguided belief that change is bad. I'm here to tell you that change is nothing more than the movement of God. And if you have in your being set to be a loving person, where all things work for your good, as, by the way, the Bible said, you're going to be fine. But like my little friend who was here sometime planting the flowers, she didn't believe that she had God inside. She'd been told that God was outside of her and wasn't concerned with mundane things like getting her a truck. Why isn't the truck God? Why isn't that part of her? There is no judgmental God. That's why there is just no such thing as being God-fearing. That's a misunderstanding of this wonderful energy called God that you are. So, I hope that helps. And I love all of you all very much, cousins and non-cousins, because kind of we all are under the skin, aren't we? We're all related in spirit. We'll be here next week, as we always are. We'll continue our talk. Man, I'm going to enjoy it. I always do. I want to thank all of you for listening in and supporting this show. Thank you so much for that. If you all will be kind enough to tell your friends and send these shows out on social media, I think that on your page of Blog Talk Radio, if I'm not mistaken, there's a way for you to send these shows out to all social media. And that helps us a lot because we're trying to build our audience. And you just have no idea how much that means to me. It really is a big thing. I am delighted to do these shows. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kat. Oh, bless your heart. You guys are just the best people in the world, my friends. Thank you. And my cousins. So you guys have a great day, all right? And I love you very much. And we'll see you next week, all right? Let's do a quick prayer. Dear God, thank you so much for all of this. Help us change and grow and be the wonderful models for growth and change and opportunity and evolvement that every life is in the world. Help us realize absolutely no moment is wasted, that there is something to learn and every moment influences another, and that we have the opportunity to be and to become more and more our love-centered, God-centered selves. We thank you so much for all of this, and we say this prayer now in your name, in the name of our ascended masters, our love-centered guides and friends, every one of them, and in the name of each and every person listening to this show. Thank you, dear God, and so it is. Amen. Okay, now you guys go out there and have a great week. Don't let me have to come and get you out of jail. All right, take care now.